Hello fellow collectors and welcome to Long's Toys. Today we are taking a look at Voyager class Optimus Primal from Transformers Kingdom War for Cybertron Trilogy. First thing you'll probably notice right off the bat that there is not the large plastic window anymore. Kingdom has this smaller window with this really beautiful artwork on the front. I think this looks phenomenal. You can see the volcano with the arc landed on top. You have Primal here in both robot and gorilla mode. Really spectacular stuff. I think they did such a nice job with all of the artwork for this line. Really happy with that. Over here, you kind of have the same kind of like mural-esque artwork that's on the side of every box. Everyone so far, Siege, Earthrise, and now Kingdom has had its own little picture here. But this is pretty cool. I'm really excited for integrating all the Beast Wars characters. I'm going to be having a good time with this line. Very excited. But nothing so much on the top or the bottom. You do get the Maximal symbol, which is pretty cool. And then on the back, you have this kind of, cave artwork style, I don't know, motif, I guess we'll call it. But really cool. Again, robot mode, gorilla mode, everything looks pretty neat. So very cool packaging. I'm going to go ahead, get this guy out of the box, and we're going to take a closer look. Here is Optimus Primal out of the packaging. He looks fantastic. I can't get over how good this guy is. One thing I did want to note real quick, though, in the packaging, he comes with this flap all the way down and pegged in, and that severely limits the hip articulation. So just make sure for robot mode, you flip that back, and that's going to open up all that hip articulation. But yeah, he's really sharp. I mean, he looks great. The paint applications are really nice. Unfortunately, mine has a little chip right here on the upper thigh, but it's really not that big a deal. But I mean, all the red and white is really sharp. The chest plate here, the head sculpt looks great. Let's zoom in on that. Really faithful to the show. Really good looking. When I think back to the one we got, I think the last one we got was during Cybertron, and that one just was, not that great, especially in retrospect. It wasn't that great at the time, but compared to this one, this is much better. Now, they did do a masterpiece of this guy a good couple of years ago, and that was a really good figure. I mean, that looked like it leapt right out of the cartoon. But this guy, for half the price, maybe even a little less than half, this is a really nice Optimus Primal figure. So let's get into articulation. The head can go from side to side, up and down. You have these little shoulder rockets here. You can move them around, and you can store them in the chest. I'll show that off a little bit later. You do have a swivel here, as well as a hinge here, but you also have kind of a butterfly joint. I'm thinking that's really more for the gorilla mode, but that's pretty cool as well, so you can kind of pound on his chest and whatnot. You do have a bicep swivel there. You have almost 180 in the elbow, so that's pretty cool. You do have a wrist swivel, and then you also have opening fists. So it's just one joint for all the fingers, but pretty cool. You do have a waist swivel right there. Just be careful with this piece back here. And again, since that piece is flipped up, it's going to open up your hip joint. You got a lot of movement there. You can go not all the way out, like you can't quite do a split, but all the way back, all the way to the front. You have a thigh swivel there. You do have, this is kind of a weird joint for the knees here, and I don't think I'm pegged all the way in, but you can see how that kind of comes unpegged. So basically there's a joint here for the actual knee, but then later on this can come unpegged as well. So it's not quite a double jointed knee, but you'll see what I mean later on. But just when you're in robot mode, you're just supposed to use this normal knee. Now he's kind of got this swivel here in the middle of the leg, and I'm not 100% sure what this is for, because it doesn't really feel like it goes all the way around, but I guess just to give him a little bit of swivel. And then you have an ankle tilt. So the way these work, this, when you transform it back, kind of unclicks, and then you kind of bring it down, and it clicks into place. So when you do that, you get a little bit of an ankle tilt, but you just have to be careful because this, piece of, I guess that's supposed to be like a connector. I'm not 100% up on my terms, but that piece there, that is faithful to the show in the original toy. That's what he's supposed to look like. But you just have to be careful with the ankle tilt, but it's still there. So yeah, he just looks absolutely phenomenal, and I really love him. So let's go ahead and we'll check out all the different features that he has. Alright, so first up we'll take a look at his two swords. He does come with two of them. They are just in the package with him, and again I have a bit of a paint flub there, but not that big a deal. You can go ahead and put these into his hands, and they look really good. I was never really sure. I think they're supposed to be this way, but I guess technically, no, they got to be like this, right? That's what I think. So anyway, he's got the two swords. Looks very good. you can take these out, and he's got these little tabs, or I should say tab spots, right there on his back. And then these have these tabs right there. So you can go ahead and peg these onto the back, which is very cool. Now the original toy had them kind of tab in and then it would close around them because those jets were like spring loaded and they would pop out. Jets slash missile launchers. Obviously that's not the case here, so these just kind of peg on. There's no way to hide these swords. So you can peg them on in either mode, but they're going to be visible. So I just wanted to show those off. We will put those off to the side. Probably my favorite part is the forearm blasters. So there's actually a little square right here that you can push on to get them to pop out. And that kind of starts them off, and then you can kind of pull them out the rest of the way. I mean, you can push them all the way out here, but there we go. Sometimes they stick a little bit. And then you can kind of angle them up and down. But he's got the forearm guns, just like on the show. Now, see, the original toy had one of them, but the whole hand, like, blasted apart, and it went this way. So, like, the hand went down, the gun spring-loaded out of here, and then the two cannons were vertical instead of horizontal. So this is more accurate to the show, and also more accurate to the show, he's got one on both forearms, because they didn't bother with the skull mace, because that's actually part of Paleotrex. We'll get there. But they didn't, it's not part of Primal like it was with the original toy. But I like this much better. I always thought those forearm blasters, wrist rockets, whatever you want to call them, much cooler. And happy that he has one on both. They're very easy to deploy. They conceal very nicely. And it's not spring-loaded. I'm not a huge fan of spring-loaded gimmicks. So I think they executed those perfectly. Here we have the tiny little shoulder cannons. They're a little dinky in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of them, but what you can do is this entire back section rocks back as part of the transformation, and you're supposed to hide them later on anyway. Do I need to... No, this will all go. There we go. So this all is for the transformation, and you're supposed to hide them later on for the gorilla mode anyway, so you can just put them down now if you don't want them. Just close them up like that, and then right back up, and there you go. Unfortunately, you can't really use them as the rockets like he did in the show, the Prime Jets, because they're completely covered here. So that's one little drawback. Again, it's a very minor nitpick, and I'm really not that upset about it. But in the show, his like missile launchers would act as rockets, and he could fly. But they're not going to be visible here, so you can't really pull that off. But still, a ton of great features. I love the weapons that he has. I mean, he's technically got, you know, the two shoulder-mounted cannons, the two wrist rockets, all just integrated in, and then he's got the two swords as separate pieces, which unfortunately can't be hidden on his body, but he can store them on his back, so that's really cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into his transformation. As you might suspect, it's not all that difficult. We're going to push down these two shoulder pieces. His arms are pretty much done. You're going to pull this section back like I just showed you. And it's a little difficult to get it to go, but I think it's just because it's like hard to get a grip on it. There we go. So what you're going to do, first of all, you're going to flip the chest piece around. Very simple there. You're going to pull this whole piece out like this. It is going to swivel around 180. Then the gorilla head is going to extend like this. Then it's going to swivel around here, 180. Then you're going to kind of push it back down, push this all the way back in, and then bring this down and close it. Very simple, works really well, very nice. If this isn't all the way down yet, you're going to push this down and kind of push it until you hear it snap. Then you're going to rotate the waist around 180 degrees. At this point, you're pretty much done. These are going to unhook there and then kind of push all the way back in like that. Do the same thing over here. And then to hide up this section, you're just going to bring this piece down, spin it 180, and then just kind of tuck it against the body. Now, unfortunately, this piece doesn't peg in anywhere, and that's kind of a bummer. But then you're just going to bend this guy, and again, make sure you bend this at the right joint. And then just kind of situate everything, and you're pretty much done. If you want to turn the wrists so it's kind of more natural for how a gorilla would walk, you can do so. And again, if you want to bring these down, you can. You don't have to, but you can use those butterfly joints. You can lift the gorilla head up, which I think is a really big deal. That's a really nice little improvement. Very simple, but I think it's a big deal. And yeah, you can just kind of pose him in gorilla mode like this. I think the gorilla mode looks fantastic. The head sculpt of the gorilla, really, really good. And I love that you can move the head all the way up and down. There's a really nice range of motion there. Otherwise, most of his articulation is pretty much the same. The shoulder joints are obviously going to be exactly the same. You have that butterfly joint. You have this swivel. You have this hinge, which sometimes it's hard to make this hinge and not this hinge move. I will say that. But you can do it. And then, of course, all the arms and everything, all that's the same articulation. Leg is pretty much the same. I do kind of wish that this pegged in somehow, this flap on the back, but it's not a big deal. Now, if you want him to stand up, you can bring him back up like this. And the reason that you have this extra weird joint here, you unpeg it from this joint. So this unsnaps from there. You can see that there was a peg. Maybe you can't see it. There you go. You can see there was a peg, and that pegged into the bottom of this red piece. So you unpeg that there and then bring it down against this other joint like that. And you can see how that kind of makes his legs look a little bit less tall and ridiculous in this form. So bring this around. And these joints are just really, really tight still on mine. So a couple times and I'll get the hang of this. But you can kind of stand them up like this. Let me zoom out a bit. And then angle that head back down. And then you can just have him kind of, you can have him stand up, maybe pound on his chest if you want. Something like that. Or just have him kind of hang out. But he doesn't look as ridiculous standing up because his legs aren't full-size robot legs, if that makes sense. And he looks good. I really like this. I like this a lot. You can even store the swords on the back still if you want. I don't think you ever use the swords in gorilla mode in the show, but whoops. Or you could flick it around like that, apparently. There we go. Peg in. So you can store him there on the back. But yeah, he's great. He's really great. Again, you have that little bit of motion here, that swivel. With the monkey feet, you can kind of bend these. He does have this bend here. And I guess he does still have ankle tilt, because it's the same piece as the other side. But yeah, really, really cool. I like him a lot. I think he looks fantastic in every mode. The crouching gorilla, the standing gorilla, the robot mode. All really well done. This guy's great. I really don't have anything bad to say about him. He's fantastic. If you can find him, I definitely recommend picking him up. I think the case assortment for Wave 1 is 3 of him to every 1 Cyclonus, so you really shouldn't have too much trouble finding him, but I definitely recommend grabbing him. Short of the masterpiece that they did a few years ago, this is the best Optimus Primal I've ever seen. And that masterpiece was expensive then, not as crazy. I mean, it was back when masterpiece toys were still moderately priced. I'm sure on the aftermarket now it's even crazier, but that was a good toy. This is a great toy for half the price, maybe less than half the price. It's really, 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 really good version of Optimus Primal, and I like it a lot. Very excited for what Kingdom's been doing so far, and this guy is definitely one of the best. So I highly recommend picking him up, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks so much for watching.